a weapon that can have the ability to fire 20, 30, 40, 50, 120 shots from that weapon, whether it's a 9mm pistol or whether it's a rifle, is ridiculous. I'm continuing to push to eliminate the sale of those things.
What's going on, everybody? That wasn't a very smooth intro outing, I guess you would call it that. Welcome back to the Death by Tyranny podcast. I decided to do a podcast Facebook Live. Hopefully I can use most of this and upload it to the YouTube channel. If not, no biggie. That's not really the main concern of the conversation tonight. Most of you don't know this. I'm assuming you just look at me and assume that I only listen to white, rageful death metal, but my preferred genre of music would be more so of jazzy or blues, R&B. So we'll get some of that going in the background for you guys. There you go. Just wanted to hop on here. I know it's late. It's really rainy. I do this in the mud room at my house. So in the summer times, it's very hot. And in the winter time, it's probably going to be freezing. So you'll see me pretty layered up here very shortly. It's actually quite cold tonight. And it's very gloomy, rainy night. I prefer to do sleeping in this weather. But I do like it, so I thought I would just hop on here and talk at you guys for a minute. I know there's not currently anybody in here, and to be honest, it doesn't really matter if anybody pops in or out or whatever. You guys just go on about your lives. You can watch this later. Hopefully, like I said, it will be uploaded to the YouTube channel as well, so it will be there until YouTube decides to get rid of me along with, everybody else that is speaking against their narrative. But the main thing I wanted to talk about tonight, and it really just chaps my ass that I have to continuously talk about this damn vaccine. But here's the thing. I see more and more people that do not believe the vaccine does any good starting to get the vaccine, even though mandates aren't in order quite yet, at least where I am and where I work at. But people are still getting the vaccine so they can go to things like, on vacation and their kids' sporting events. And they don't want to they don't want to risk losing their normal lifestyle, even though there is a risk to the vaccine. Now, to me, I don't think that that's a very good idea. We've already seen that we can, and we might be forced to again, to go without things like sporting events and large gatherings. And maybe this is why people are getting the vaccine, to go on vacation and to these sporting events and concerts and such, because they want to go while they can. But if you get the vaccine and you have a negative side effect, or you catch COVID because you are being vaccinated and then you are hospitalized, and worst case scenario, heaven forbid, knock on wood, that you were to pass away, was it really worth it for that one season of middle school, high school, baseball? Well, it's not for me to judge, I guess. It's your life. You can do what you want. But there's going to come a time where it's going to be very hard to back being against mandates when you're already vaccinated. And then you will have to fight against the boosters. And at that point, we might be in over our heads, and maybe we are now. But if there is a risk to the vaccine, which we are seeing more and more of, you have 2 shots to try to get through and hopefully not have any side effects. And now they are talking about boosters for every 5 to 6 months after that. So at that point, you are just gambling with side effects, and whether they could be severe or not, I'm sure depends on the health of the person and the age and all kinds of things. But we have seen a lot of places that have tried to push the mandates already start to back the boosters and require them. And we have seen the vaccine passports have places for the booster shots after the 2 original shots. And you had a lot of people that are using the FDA's approval of the vaccine to kind of bully people into getting it. Well, the FDA voted 16-2 that the booster shots were not a good idea. And Fauci came out in a press conference after the FDA, 16-2, if you thought you might have misheard me there, against the boosters. Fauci comes out and says, I think it's still going to happen. I think we're still going to mandate the boosters. We're still going to get the boosters to be FDA approved. Well, that's very telling, and you should be very worried about that. For scientists that are actively trying to support Big Pharma are still coming out and saying that this isn't a good idea. And I have some clips saved for you guys tonight that will show you that these FDA scientists and doctors are telling people like Fauci that the test studies weren't big enough, that the people with concerns have a right to be concerned, because the fact is there is side effects, and in some age categories and for some people that are healthy, the risk versus reward when it comes to the vaccines and boosters are very lopsided. And so I will play, I think we'll do, there is one of these scientists comes out and he specifically talks about Nicki Minaj coming out and saying she doesn't want to get the vaccine until she does her own research, because her cousin had a friend who his balls swelled up after getting the vaccine, and now he is impotent, and his soon-to-be wife left him, and everybody comes out, the conservative side comes out in support of Nicki Minaj, kind of mocking almost, as well as the left doing the same thing, just for the opposite team, if you will. And the scientist is trying to say, there is evidence that this actually happened. And for people to come out and use this as a joke and for entertainment is wrong, and we can't disprove that the possibility of becoming impotent after getting the vaccination isn't a possibility. So we'll go ahead and we'll play that clip. And then the other clip that I have is a scientist from Johns Hopkins who is saying that the people that are constantly saying the unvaccinated people are uneducated and stupid in some cases are very, very disingenuous, because in most cases the unvaccinated are more informed of the risk and the vaccination and COVID, and he has seen this in his nurses as well as his hospital. And the doctor is arguing that we need to broaden the studies for the vaccinations and the boosters to help promote the vaccines and the boosters. But in him doing this, he is hitting a lot of the points that the people who don't want the vaccine are saying. We're not uneducated. We're not just following conservative media. We're going out, we're looking up these studies because the CDC isn't doing them. And there are people that have done them on animals. There are people that are doing them in other countries. There are countries that are way more vaccinated than we are, seeing, more COVID than ever. And there's not really any explanation behind this. And that's because they're not doing the studies that would point us in the direction of if it is or if it isn't. They just aren't doing the studies because they're afraid, in my opinion, what the outcome is going to be. So let's go ahead and we'll play those clips and then we'll talk about it. And I want to also talk about something, it's a more personal story to me, but it goes back to people being vaccinated to go on vacation and to, vaccinating their kids so they can play sports when, we just gave up a year of our life for very little risk, if any. And now you're willing to risk your children's and your own lives for vacations and a season of baseball. It doesn't make much sense. So I will tell that story after the clips. We'll go ahead and get into this. I'll turn my little bluesy jazz stuff off here. Give me a second. All right. Oh, I don't even know if you guys were hearing the bluesy jazz stuff. I had that channel turned off.
And the safety events that we are looking for, the safety signals happens at about 5 to 6 months. How could that larger sample detect them? And that's the issue. We are calling for longer term studies, larger sample size, but longer term, we need the medium and long term studies to best assess the safety and efficacy, particularly safety, particularly when you're talking about putting these vaccines in our children's arms. We currently do not have the safety data. We actually do not. And for anyone at the CDC, anyone at the NIH, and anyone at the FDA to claim so, that is being disingenuous to the public. Now, I wanted to end by saying this. I looked at a study this morning by chance on testicular infection post-CoV, SARS-CoV-2 virus. That means that there is an issue. And we are extrapolating based on the Japanese data that looked at the lipid nanoparticles and the mRNA that were accumulating in the tissue in the rat model. Yes, it's a rat model, but we have to extrapolate to humans. That showed that the lipid nanoparticle, the constituency of the vaccine, is accumulating in the ovaries, in the testes, in the spleen, in the adrenals, etc. So when somebody like Nicki Minaj, I have to invoke this, makes that statement, that's not a joke. People want to make this a joke and parody it, etc. But this is a very, very serious consideration because we even have animal data that shows us that there's a drop in fertility in the animal model. So we need this properly investigated. The public needs this answer properly. And I want to end by saying this. Under no condition, none, zero, based on the evidence today, must children be indicated for these vaccines. There is no risk to children, no statistical zero in terms of spreading and in terms of getting serious illness or dying from this. Dr. Martin Makary at Johns Hopkins, they looked at all of the tests. Hello?
Yeah, we're out of time, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so just in case that last bit caught your attention, he was citing a study out of Johns Hopkins that is showing that children with no prior health issues shows no risk of dying or hospitalization from COVID, nor spreading COVID. So if we have studies out there that the CDC is not doing, and another university, a highly respected university, one that if it pointed in the narrative of the mainstream, we would be accepting, if they are doing these studies and it is showing that our kids are not affected by this, why are we still taping masks to them in school? Why is that still an issue if we have studies? And if you want to still make our children wear masks in school, then the CDC needs to do these studies. I personally don't respect or trust a whole lot of the CDC studies, but at least they would have their own data to back the evidence of why they are trying to force this upon our children. Because there are people that are coming out that are in favor of vaccinations, that are still finding that this is no threat to our children. Yet we're still doing it. So that's kind of what he was getting at the last part of that clip. Now, the main part of the clip was to say that Nicki Minaj came out and said that, her cousin, friend got the vaccine. His testicles swollen up, and he became impotent after a certain amount of time. Now, she posted this to Twitter, and she was mocked, and the White House has even invited her to come and be educated on COVID. Trying to lead that information to people to say that Nicki Minaj is out of her mind. She is spouting off things she does not know about, and that this is probably not true. However, what you just heard is that there is evidence in the rat studies for these vaccinations and boosters and NRMA vaccinations that are causing issues in the ovaries and the testicles of these rats. So there is studies out there that say this is very possible. So her concerns are relevant. And that's pretty much all that clip was getting at. Just to get off the vaccine thing real quick, because I'll forget about it, because we're going to keep going on that train here tonight. But there is some more misinformation going around Facebook, and for the most part, not a lot of people are talking about it. We see that Democrats and the people on the left, I know our children don't, but there are plenty of children that do. The next school district over is mandated from elementary all the way to high school to wear masks. That's not a state over. That's not a country over. That is literally the next school district to us. Yeah, and that's a lot of people's theory, Bill, is that, we're trying to... What you have is, and it's a conversation I really wasn't going to get in tonight. I was listening to Jordan Peterson talk about religion and science, and Jordan Peterson is religious. He is a very huge influencer in the libertarian movement. Like I said, the libertarian movement has its faults, but Jordan Peterson is a very intelligent professor from Canada. He is very highly regarded. But he was talking about the fact that we can have conversations about science that doesn't disprove religion, and we can have conversations about religion that doesn't disprove science. If you truly want separation of state and religion, then let it be. Stop trying to pull these two things into conversations with one another, because there are things that science cannot explain that religion can, and vice versa. And I think that's the issue, that some of these people that don't believe in religion, they aren't taking into account that the human psyche is programmed to seek out something to worship, and science cannot explain this. And this is why we see so many people that follow religion, and why religion impacts society so much for so long. It's because it has been instilled into us for a long time to seek something out and worship it. And so the people who do not believe in a religion, they might not be worshiping God, but they are worshiping something, whether it be sports, sex, drugs, government. So I think that's why you get the people that are determined to only do the studies that are pointing in one outcome. Well, that's not really a true scientific study then, if you already are determined in the outcome. And I think that's what's scary about what Fauci's saying. You know, the FDA is saying that the boosters are not a good idea, especially not for our children. And he still comes out and says, well, it's going to happen. Why is he so sure that it's going to happen? Or is he so sure that people follow him so blindly that he can make it happen? I got to get closer to my phone. I don't know what the fuck you guys are saying. Oh, shit. Yeah, I can only once it moves up, I can only read so much of the comment. That's another thing. How is it pointing and following the science for mask to work when you're standing up or on a bus or on a plane, but when you're eating, when there's heavier and thicker particles flying out of your mouth, COVID is irrelevant then? Or could we just say, well, it's near impossible not to spread COVID if we were to have it, so it's almost pointless that we wear these masks. And I think that that's the main takeaway from the mask conversation, is that even if it slows the spread of COVID down by 0.01%, there's no way that it can do that at all times. And it's definitely not doing it for our children. We've already seen studies of that in Georgia. These are American studies, big studies, and in most cases, larger studies than what the CDC is doing. They are saying there is no more or less danger for COVID to be spread in school among children if they are wearing masks or not wearing masks. There is no difference. The only thing you're doing is potentially damaging their psyche, the way their brain develops. And that's just the mask. We're talking about, if you get into the vaccine, the risk versus reward, especially for people under 50 that are in decent shape, it's not looking great for the vaccine. And why did the CDC not inform the public about myocarditis and the swelling of the heart after the vaccine, yet their studies showed this? Well, that's because their studies weren't looking for that. They didn't want their studies to show that. So they just set it aside. And that's what these doctors in these clips are saying. We need to open up the studies. We need a broader spectrum when it comes to the studies, because there is a lot of things that are being found out after the fact. It's already too late after you take the vaccine. And like I said, so before I play the next clip, I'll just get into the personal story. I don't have a whole lot of really close personal friends, but I do talk to my dad quite a bit, and I see him as a father figure. Of course, he is my father, and as a friend. He does not agree with the vaccine. He does not trust the vaccine, but he got the vaccine so his wife and my brother could go on a trip, and he could go. He got the first shot, and now he's terribly ill with COVID. He has spent 2 years not working from home, but going into work, being a part of society, not being scared of COVID, not wearing a mask for the large portion of the time. So is it a coincidence that he catches COVID days after his first dose of the COVID vaccine? Now, I don't know a whole lot of people that have up and died that are middle-aged and in good health from COVID that weren't vaccinated. But the more that people get vaccinated, I do know people that are seeing side effects and that are experience COVID complications after the vaccine. And now that's just my perspective, be it that it's a very small, controlled perspective, but I don't think I'm the only one. I think this is, in large case, most of us. That's a good point. There are tons of people making videos all over the place, and they're being taken down. I seen a video, I think Bill might have shared it, of a guy who is a painter. He's painted for a long time. He does like the spray, when you're painting outside homes, a lot of times they'll use these sprayers instead of like a paintbrush. and they wear multiple layers of mask on top of special masks, and you can still take them off. And there's paint all in your nose, in your nostrils. You can blow your nose and paint will come out. And COVID is way more likely to move through those layers than paint. So that's a good point. Why have special masks for mold removal and things like this? But yet, the cheapest, shittiest cloth, Chinese-made garbage is supposed to protect your children in school. It's not going to happen. That's cool. I get it. Like I said, I didn't think nobody was going to hop on here. I'm getting pretty used to talking to a screen. And in most cases, it's easier to talk to a screen, to be honest. I had this conversation with somebody at work. When you're trying to have a conversation about things that are going on at work, and they're just not, they either don't care or they don't get it. It's like, why am I even having this conversation? It's the same reason I don't want to talk about the vaccine anymore. I can have all the evidence and all the facts and show it to you. And if you are, worshiping at the feet of Lord Fauci, you're just going to say that I'm crazy. So, go take care of the new baby bill, and I'll probably do one of these tomorrow. I am supposed to meet somebody tomorrow. I don't know. There's going to be some timing issues, but I have some firearm gear that I'm not using, and he has a camera and lens that I'm interested in. I don't know if I'll be able to make it out, so I might be on here just trying out some things. Tomorrow might be pretty chaotic to watch if I am on here live, because I will probably go through Ecamm for the first time, and I will probably be using a camera instead of my phone if I can meet him and everything works out. But it's in Cincinnati. Well, it's closer towards Cincinnati because I'll be at St. Elizabeth's tomorrow. So, meeting people on the internet. But before I get too off topic, because I'm all over the place with religion and Jordan Peterson and vaccines and vacations, but yeah, just to say that, now this is personally impacting me so close as it's my dad. And like I said, he knows everything that I know, and for the most part, we're sharing information in between each other, and he still gets the vaccine for a vacation. Maybe, and I played a clip last week, I'll replay it this week, about doctors that are starting to manipulate the medical industry and the hospitals to scare people into getting the vaccine. So now I don't even know if it's such a good idea to be telling people that it's between you and your doctor, because your doctor might have ill intent or some type of a biased verse or for the vaccine. So at this point, if you are religious, if you do believe in God, you might want to have this conversation between you and God. Do as much research as you possibly can, sleep on it for a while, and maybe ask God to show you a sign if you're supposed to get the vaccine. Because doing it for a vacation just doesn't seem like it's worth it to me. There has been a moth in my mudroom on this light, and every time I go to kill it, it flies away. And it's been like 3 days. I'm pretty sure it's the same moth. I don't know how long moths live. I'll have to look that up. Anyways, let's get on to the next clip. This is the professor at Johns Hopkins that is doing the study that the guy referred to about kids not being affected by COVID for the most part, as far as being hospitalized or death or being spreading the virus. And he also touches on what we were just talking about as far as the vaccinated being less informed than the unvaccinated, but they're still calling us the ones that are, anti-vax and, uneducated. And it's just not the truth. I mean, think about it. If You see a new car and you think it's just hot shit, and you go buy it before you do any research. What is the likelihood that you are going to look for things to be wrong with that car after you have already signed the loan for it? You're probably not going to. But the people who maybe don't care for that car so much see it come out and everybody buying it, and they're like, is this car that great? Because it doesn't seem that great to me. And then they do their research. So now who is more informed? The person who went out and bought the car without waiting and seeing all of the things that could possibly be wrong with it after its first year of release, or the people who waited and who were skeptical? Who's more informed about that vehicle, do you think? And even if the people who bought the car without knowing the information find it out later, it's too late at that point. And that's where I'm getting at. Once you get the vaccine, if you find out their side effects, does it really fucking matter? It's too late now. What are you going to do about it? But, okay, I'm shutting up now. We're going to play the clip.
My name is Dr. Joseph Freeman, no conflicts to declare. I'm an emergency physician educated at Cornell Medical School. My residency was Charity Hospital in New Orleans, where I work. Over 65% of the population are not vaccinated. I'm here today to ask for help for those working the front line to help us reduce vaccine hesitancy. For this, we need larger trials that demonstrate the vaccine reduced hospitalization without finding evidence of serious harm. I know many think the vaccine hesitants are dumb or just misinformed. That's not at all what I've seen. In fact, typically, independent of education level, the vaccine hesitant I've met in the ER are more familiar with vaccine studies and more aware of their own COVID risk than the vaccinated. For example, many of my nurses have refused the vaccine, despite having seen COVID-19 cause more death and devastation than most people have. I asked them, why refuse the vaccine? They tell me while they've seen the firsthand dangers of COVID in the elderly, the obese, diabetics, they think their risk is low. They're not wrong. One nurse showed me this Oxford risk calculator. A 30-year-old female has about a 1 in 7,000 chance of catching COVID and being hospitalized over 90 days. She asked me, can I assure her that the studies found her risk of serious harm from the vaccine is lower than her risk of hospitalization? The truth is I can't. Our trials weren't big enough. They weren't big enough to identify the vaccines cause myocarditis, yet now we know they do. A recent observational study suggests the risk of vaccine-induced myocarditis in young males is higher than their risk of hospitalization from COVID. Is this true? We don't know. It's based on observational data. To know it's not...
All right, so there you go. So he's telling you that there's no risk to our children from COVID unless they have pre-existing conditions. But however, there is a huge study that males in particularly at the age 17 and under are seeing a high rate of getting myocarditis after being vaccinated. So get vaccinated when you have almost no risk to COVID and risk getting myocarditis, which has in between, I believe it's you could have a blood clot and die right there, or a heart attack at a very young age. But the life expectancy is something like 5 years after you are been shown to have developed this issue. And we already know in the military, more people have died from vaccinations than COVID. Yet the military is being forced to be vaccinated. And this gets back to Bill's point. Where is the logic in forcing people to be vaccinated when the risk is greater than dying or being hospitalized from COVID? Well, I think Bill's on the right track there. It is a way to control the population of the earth. And now we'll get into the religious aspect of it. These people do not believe in a God. They are not afraid of God. They think they are gods. And so the thing that they worship is their altar, their kingdom, and their kingdom is the earth. And they can only be in power and thrive as long as the host thrives. And that's where you get these people that are worshiping climate change and things like that. Now, this isn't to say that we shouldn't be good hosts of the earth. We should take care of earth. But we should never put human life underneath the survival of the earth, because we know that the world's not going to end tomorrow because of pollution. And in most part, if everyone in the United States stopped driving and eating meat tomorrow, it would have a very little percentage of an effect on climate change or the percentage of pollution that is made every day on around the world. China makes like 60 to 70% of this pollution. And their god is the state, and making China the greatest country there is. So to think that they are going to stop doing what they're doing to save the world or to make it last a little bit longer is kind of naive. And I think these big tech, big pharma, the politically elite, what they believe in and what their mission is they think that they can prolong their rule on Earth and the lasting of the world by bringing down the population. And there are studies that show that there is still plenty of room in the world for these people. Now, there is not plenty of room in the United States for these people. And this is where we will go ahead and jump away from the vaccine, and we'll get a little bit more into the woods as far as what people want to believe and not believe. But here's the thing. President Donald Trump lowered our refugees that we could take into the country per year down to 16,000. And in his last 2 years in office, he only brought in about 3,000 to 4,000 refugees. That's pretty low. I think the United States is at the point that we should no longer accept any refugees. We should be putting America first, and until we can help our own people, and until we can get through a pandemic without tyrannical rulership, that we should not pay any attention to any of this other than ourselves. But I can see where that view might be considered selfish. But anyways, getting back to the Trump bringing the refugees intake for the year down to 16,000. Biden has just increased that, not double, not triple, not quadruple, but up to 125,000 refugees a year. Keep in mind that the illegal immigrants crossing the border do not count towards this goal of 125,000 refugees a year. These 40,000 Haitians at the border that are refugees, they are saying that it has moved too quickly for them to be able to count the 40,000 Haitians at the border towards this 125,000 refugees for the year. The refugees coming from Afghanistan, same thing there. It moved too fast. We can't count them in the 125,000 refugees we're taking in a year. And in most cases, they're not even keeping track of the people that are crossing the border, and they lose track of people, and there's no way to find the count that is crossing the border. They are trying to make it to where you can get a green card within 12 months that allowed them to get things like welfare benefits and government assistance, what impact do you think that's going to play on the American taxpayer dollar, the American middle class and working class, to be funding an extra 125,000 plus an uncounted amount of people a year on welfare? How is that going to impact our economy? How is that going to impact everything? Why are we not worried about this? And why the hell is anyone letting Biden move the goalpost that far? 16,000 to 125,000, and then you're not going to count any of the refugees, which are in the hundreds of thousands of people we've allowed in this country this year that he has been president. That's not even been a whole 12 months. It's not a good thing for the country. And the only thing that they are caring about is, look, the faster we can get these people citizenship, if we are the ones that allowed them to flood in with no looking at any of the consequences to the people that are already here, they would vote for us. That's all they care about. Like I said, all they care about is for them to be in power, for them to play God, and for them to keep their kingdom as long as possible. None of this is in the well-being of the United States, the people of the United States. And in some cases, it has very little, if any, relevance to the health and well-being of the earth. We are just doing these things that is playing into our downfall for these powerful elitist type of people's egos. That's a very dangerous game. And I don't want to stick around too long because it is already 1 o'clock, and I do have some appointments in that guy I have to meet tomorrow. But I will leave on this. There is a lot of misinformation going around Facebook. Both sides are pointing this out. You can choose to believe whatever side you want to believe. But Biden and the left uses this argument against me personally. They will say, what mandates? You're not being mandated. Your kids don't have to wear a mask in school. Like I said, the town over has to wear a mask in school. The state over has vaccine mandates and passports. So it's getting closer and closer. Well, why would I wait until I'm under attack to go on the defense? It's time to play offense. The defensive strategy is getting us nowhere. And so when people say that Biden isn't a authoritarian and isn't tyrannical because some of the things he is trying to do hasn't taken place, that isn't so. He is still trying to do it. And in a lot of cases, even when he is shut down, he continues to do it. We have seen him do this with the Constitution, with the Supreme Court, and we're only in the first 9 months of his presidency. Well, the misinformation that I am speaking about is where you are seeing that Biden is trying to be able to track the transactions of any purchase over $600 and above. Currently, right now, anything under, I believe it's 10 grand, the IRS can track. And they can use that to investigate anything about your life at this point. So if you go out and you buy a $20,000 car, guess what? The IRS and anybody who is interested in gets a notification that you have done that purchase. Biden is trying to move this all the ways down to $600. This is the misinformation. It is not every $600 purchase. It is every single bank account that has $600 or more. It can be a $1 purchase. If your bank account had $600 in the time of that transaction, they can now track that purchase. That is what Biden is trying to do. Why would the federal government need to know what everybody with $600 or more, which isn't a lot of money, quite frankly. There's a couple times a week where I have more than $600 in my bank account, and I'm definitely not above middle class, if anything, lower middle class. Why would the federal government need to know what I would be doing with any transaction as long as I have that kind of money? Well, they want easier access. They want easier access to see what you're buying, what you're preparing for. Did you buy a large amount of ammo? Well, that's none of their fucking business. But if this goes through, even if it is not their business, they will be able to look into these things. Most decent firearms are above $600 alone. So if you are not paying for this in cash, they are most definitely going to see those transactions. Because not only would you have to have $600 in your bank account, but the gun probably costs $600. So I don't know what level of notification they would get at that point. I'm assuming a pretty decent one, because you're already going to go through a NICS check and a background check. So they're going to be keeping track of all the preparations you are doing, which is your right as an American to prepare for whatever you want for your child's future, for the end of the world, for the second coming of Christ. It does not matter. It is your right to property and the pursuit of happiness. If being prepared is what makes you happy, you have that right. Well, now Biden is going to stick his creepy sniffer all up in your bank account and know everything that you buy. This is dangerous territory we're leading into. And you want to talk about risk versus reward? What is the reward that we would be getting allowing the federal government this information? I can tell you what they could potentially do with this information. And right before I came on here, I was listening to Salty Crackers Live, which I don't know if he saves it on Ramble. I know he deletes it right after it's finished on YouTube. I will try to go back and maybe pull some clips from that, because he talks kind of goofy, but he does have a lot of good information. And he was talking about Project Mockingbird. Project Mockingbird is something that we've seen come out in Congress, that the government was playing with newspapers and news outlets to spread information the way they wanted, in the narrative that they wanted it to. And that's putting it in a very layman's term, but that's what they were doing. Well, there is no evidence, and this is open to the public. You can look it up. There is actual video clips of this happening in Congress. But there is no evidence that Project Mockingbird was ever dismantled. Well, all of the late night show hosts for mainstream television have come out and said that they are teaming up with John Kerry to promote climate change. So this is the government and politics and politicians teaming up with entertainers and news outlets and the mainstream media to promote a narrative that they are wanting to push on the American people. And they said it out loud. Now, do you think that climate change is the only thing that they're doing this with? Or do you think maybe that they did it with trying to discredit President Trump? Do you think they're pushing people to be very hostile towards the unvaccinated? Even if the government admits to one thing, it's very, very unlikely that that is the only misdeed that the government is doing. And I've not even covered in a show the January 6th protest rally for the people locked up due to January 6th. Almost every single person involved there worked for some agency. The only person that got arrested was because his firearm was printing pretty obviously. And haven't released what agency he worked for, but you can clearly see that these stormtrooper type agents are asking him, "Are you working?" Why would that be the first question you ask somebody if you see that they have a gun at the Capitol at a protest? Hey, you got a gun. Are you working? Why would that be the first question out of your mouth? Furthermore, the guy doesn't want to answer because he's undercover in the fucking Proud Boys. And I'm sure as much as the Proud Boys is infiltrated with feds, there probably are some loyal people that would probably kill that motherfucker if they found out he was undercover. So he clearly does not want to give this information up. And he's like, no, I'm just here participating, wearing the same glasses and haircut as everybody here. And then they pull a fucking badge out of his pocket. Well, I hope they rushed him into protective services, because if not, he's going to be fucking floating down a river in a couple of days because you guys blew his fucking cover. And this just goes to show you that the government not only will try to gaslight the American people into terrorism and will continue to try to target this narrative of white rage and white supremacy, continue to push this January 6th narrative, but they will do it, and they're not even organized about it. You know, the CIA has the same mission as the FBI, as the Department of Justice, the DOJ, and they're not even working together. They just know that Master said this is the goal. This is the narrative we follow. But I'm not going to call the fucking agency next door to see what they're wearing undercover at the protest. We're all just going to look like a bunch of dumbasses. And this has been the argument for people against conspiracy theories with 9/11. How would the government keep something like that under wraps when they are so incapable? Plenty of people that have worked for these agencies will tell you that they are very unorganized, and that would be a very difficult task to do. Well, maybe it isn't the government that do some of these things. Maybe there's another level, deep state, if you will. We sure know that Hillary Clinton's got a lot of things going on behind the scene, and a lot of people end up dead that hang around that cunt. So, but yeah, so that's what happened. And the big red flag with the protest at the Capitol for January 6th, people being held, is that you would think that if something that was important to the conservative movement, to Republicans, to the alt-right, if you will, to the dissident right, if it was such an important thing to their cause and their movement, wouldn't we and the people like me be spreading this information and trying to get people in support for that event? But that wasn't the case. People like Alex Jones, Nick Fuentes, they were coming out and said, this is a red flag. Do not go. We did not hear about it. The first time we heard about it was in leftist media and leftist news. This is a honeypot. You guys are going to go, and you are going to be imprisoned, targeted, and gaslighted. And I just don't think we can trust a government that is trying to instill and use all of their tools at their disposal against their own people like that. That is incredibly dishonest. But they got to push this narrative. And even people that know this, believe this to their core, are still going out and getting vaccinated. With no question. You guys got to stop and think a little bit more than that. But I think that's going to be it for tonight. Thanks to everybody who did join. I will try to get on here tomorrow. It might not be a very informal live. I think I will go ahead and upload this. I know I was kind of all over the place, but I'm just trying to stay in contact, pass on the information that I'm hearing that maybe some of you guys might not be. Tomorrow might be a little bit more trial and error as far as the technical side of things. Hopefully we can get through it pretty swiftly, and then we're going to do lots more cool things after that. We're going to be able to screen share so you can see what I see instead of just hearing it. So you will be able to see the sources of this information that I'm bringing to you guys is legit, or at least from the sources that I'm pulling it from, whether you believe they are legit or not. And it's not just me rambling. As well as, like I said, I would like to be able to get on here, and if anybody has any firearms questions as far as purchasing and what might be best suited for their needs, I might be able to point them in the right direction, with some of the inventory being harder to find nowadays, as well as ammo and other things that maybe some people don't really pay attention to, like body armor, stuff like that. Maybe we can help you find some of that stuff here. All right, well, enjoy this nice, gloomy, rainy, dark night. I'm gonna go hang out with my dog and try to get some sleep. I love you guys. Stay safe, stay prepared, and I'll see y'all later.